Grace Jennings had exactly $47 in her checking account when she accidentally spilled coffee all over a man who would change her life forever. The morning had started badly. Her alarm had failed to go off, forcing her to sprint through her morning routine in her cramped studio apartment. At 23, she had imagined her life after college would involve more than waitressing at an upscale restaurant and struggling to pay rent in the city. But dreams of becoming a photographer had taken a backseat to survival, and survival meant getting to her day job at the art gallery on time. She had grabbed her coffee from the corner shop, juggling her portfolio bag and her purse while trying to text her boss that she would be 5 minutes late. The sidewalk was crowded with the usual morning rush, and she had not seen him until it was too late. Her shoulder collided with his chest, and the lid of her coffee cup popped off, sending hot liquid cascading down the front of his crisp white shirt and charcoal suit. "Oh my God!" Grace gasped, her phone clattering to the pavement. "I am so sorry." The man looked down at his ruined shirt, then back up at her. Grace's breath caught. He was striking in a way that made her forget her own name for a moment. Dark hair with touches of silver at the temples, strong jawline, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to see right through her panic. He had to be in his 40s, but he wore the years with a confidence that made age irrelevant. "It's all right," he said, his voice deep and unexpectedly calm. "Accidents happen." "No, it's not all right. Your suit probably costs more than my rent." Grace was already digging through her purse for napkins, finding only a crumpled tissue. "I'll pay for the cleaning or replacement, whatever you need." A hint of amusement crossed his face. "That won't be necessary, really." "I insist." Grace finally looked up from the coffee stain to meet his eyes fully. Something passed between them, a spark of connection that made her heart skip. "I'm usually not this much of a disaster, just today, and maybe yesterday, and possibly most of Tuesday." He laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise both of them. "I'm Robert Davis, Grace Jennings." She bent to retrieve her phone, grateful it had survived the fall. "I really do feel terrible about this." "Tell you what," Robert said, checking his watch. It was an elegant piece that probably cost more than her car. "I was heading to a meeting, but it's not until 9. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here. You can buy me a replacement coffee and we'll call it even." Grace blinked. "That seems like I'm getting off too easy." "Then make it a good cup of coffee." The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. "I take mine black." She should have said no. She was already late for work. But something about the way he looked at her, patient and interested and entirely unbothered by the coffee dripping from his shirt, made her nod. "Okay, but I'm buying you breakfast too. It's the least I can do." The cafe was small and warm, filled with the scent of fresh pastries and espresso. Robert had excused himself to the restroom to clean up his shirt as best he could, and Grace had ordered 2 coffees and a selection of croissants, wincing as her card was charged. There went her grocery budget for the week. When he returned, his shirt was still stained but no longer dripping. He had removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms. Grace tried not to stare. "So," Robert said, settling into the chair across from her, "tell me about your Tuesday disaster. You really want to know." Grace wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers. "I've got 20 minutes before I need to leave. Entertain me." So she told him about how she had been photographing the sunset in the park and had been so focused on getting the perfect shot that she had not noticed the sprinklers were about to turn on. About running through the park soaking wet, her camera thankfully safe but her dignity thoroughly drowned. She made it funny, exaggerating the details, and was rewarded with his laughter. "You're a photographer?" Robert asked, his interest seeming genuine. "Trying to be." Right now I work at the Meridian Gallery. I'm actually late for that job right now, which my boss is going to love. Grace checked her phone, 3 missed calls. But I also waitress 4 nights a week at Celestine, the fancy French place downtown. I know it. The duck is excellent there. The duck costs $60. I've never tried it. Grace bit into a croissant, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. What about you? What do you do that requires such an expensive suit at 8 in the morning? I'm in manufacturing, Robert said, which seemed like an oversimplification. Industrial equipment, mostly. It's not particularly exciting, says the man who can afford to replace a suit without blinking. Grace regretted the words as soon as they left her mouth. Sorry, that was rude. It was honest. Robert studied her with those unsettling blue eyes. I like honest. They talked for another 15 minutes, the conversation flowing easily. Grace learned he had been working since he was 16, that he took his coffee black because his father had, and he had never seen a reason to change, that he had a sister in California he did not see often enough. She told him about her small-town upbringing, her parents who thought moving to the city for art was impractical, her dream of having her own exhibition someday. When Robert finally checked his watch and stood to leave, Grace felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. This was nice, he said, and meant it. Thank you for the coffee. Thank you for not suing me or yelling at me or any of the other reasonable responses to having coffee thrown at you. Grace gathered her things, preparing to rush to the gallery and face her boss's irritation. Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. If you're ever interested in photographing industrial equipment, give me a call. His tone was light, teasing. Grace took the card, glancing at it briefly. Robert Davis, Chief Executive Officer, Davis Industrial Solutions. Her eyes widened. You're a CEO, guilty. Does that change things? It makes the suit make more sense. Grace tucked the card into her purse, her mind racing. A CEO, she had dumped coffee on a CEO. I should probably apologize again. You should probably get to work. Robert held the door open for her, ever the gentleman. It was genuinely nice to meet you, Grace Jennings, even under caffeinated circumstances. They parted ways on the sidewalk, Robert heading east and Grace west. She did not expect to see him again. Men like that did not exist in the same world as struggling artists with $47 in their bank accounts. But 3 days later, on Saturday evening, Grace was taking an order at Celestine when she heard a familiar voice. I'll have the duck. She turned, her pen freezing above her notepad. Robert Davis sat at table 12, looking impossibly handsome in a dark suit, this one free of coffee stains. He was alone, a book open beside his plate. You're here, Grace said, stating the obvious. I am. I was in the neighborhood and remembered you recommended this place. The amusement was back in his eyes. Well, mentioned it. Same difference. I didn't recommend anything. I said I couldn't afford the duck. Then I'll have to order it and let you know if it's worth the price. Robert closed his book, giving her his full attention. How has your week been? Any more sprinkler incidents, just the usual chaos? Grace was aware of her boss watching from across the room. She should take his order and move on. Instead, she found herself lingering. The duck really is good. Pair it with the Bordeaux. Excellent suggestion, and bring whatever you think I should have for an appetizer. I trust your judgment. Grace nodded, writing quickly. I'll put this in for you. She walked away, her heart beating faster than it should. He had come here, to her restaurant. That meant something, did it not? Or maybe he really had been in the neighborhood and remembered. Rich people probably ate at expensive restaurants all the time without it meaning anything. Throughout the evening, Grace found excuses to check on table 12. Robert ate slowly, savoring each bite, occasionally making notes in the margins of his book. When she refilled his wine, he asked about her photography. When she brought his dessert, he told her about a factory in Ohio that needed updating. Their conversations were brief, interrupted by her other tables, but each one left her wanting more. At the end of the night, when Grace brought him his check, Robert handed her his credit card along with something else. Another business card. "Turn it over," he said. She did. On the back, in neat handwriting, was a phone number. "This is your cell. I thought maybe you'd like to get dinner sometime, somewhere less expensive where you're not working." Robert's confidence seemed to waver slightly. "Unless I'm reading this wrong." Grace's mouth went dry. "You want to take me to dinner? I'd like to get to know you better. The parts that don't involve coffee disasters or sprinkler incidents." He paused. "Unless you're seeing someone, I should have asked that first." "I'm not seeing anyone." The words came out too quickly. "And yes, I'd like that." Robert's smile was worth every anxious flutter in her chest. "Tomorrow? I know it's short notice. Tomorrow works." He suggested a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood Grace loved but rarely visited. Nothing too fancy, he promised, somewhere they could actually talk. Grace agreed, gave him her number, and watched him leave with a generous tip that would cover her groceries for the week. Her coworker Melissa appeared at her elbow the moment Robert was gone. Was that Robert Davis? As in Davis Industrial Solutions, Robert Davis. You know him. Grace, everyone knows him. He's worth like hundreds of millions, maybe more. He's one of the biggest manufacturers in the country. Melissa grabbed her arm. And he just asked you out. How did you even meet him? I spilled coffee on him. You what? Grace laughed, suddenly giddy. I literally dumped an entire cup of coffee down his shirt on Monday morning, and now he wants to take me to dinner. This is insane. You're going, right? Of course I'm going. That night, Grace lay in bed staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment, Robert's business card on her nightstand. A Millionaire CEO wanted to take her to dinner. The age gap worried her a little. He had to be in his 40s, maybe 43 or 44, 20 years older than her. But he did not feel old when they talked. He felt present and interested and interesting. She picked up her phone and typed out a text to the number he had written. "Thank you for coming to the restaurant tonight. I'm looking forward to tomorrow." His response came quickly. "Me too. Sleep well, Grace." She did better than she had in weeks. The Italian restaurant was everything Robert had promised. Cozy and intimate without being pretentious, with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. Grace had agonized over what to wear, finally settling on a simple navy dress that was nice enough for a date, but did not scream that she had tried too hard. Robert was already there when she arrived, standing to greet her. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt, casual in a way that made him seem more accessible. "You look beautiful," he said, and she believed him. "You look significantly less coffee-stained than the last time I saw you in daylight." He laughed and pulled out her chair. They ordered wine and pasta, and the conversation picked up where it had left off at the cafe and the restaurant, easy and natural. Grace learned that Robert was 43, exactly 20 years older than her. That he had built his company from almost nothing, taking over his father's failing machine shop at 25 and transforming it into an industry leader. That he had been engaged once, years ago, but it had ended when they realized they wanted different things from life. What did she want? Grace asked, twirling pasta around her fork. "Marriage, kids, a quieter life. I was working 80-hour weeks trying to save the company. We grew apart." Robert sipped his wine. "Looking back, we were never really right for each other. We just thought we should be." "Do you regret not having kids?" "Sometimes. But I also think you shouldn't have children unless you can give them the time and attention they deserve. I wasn't ready then." He paused. "What about you? What does Grace Jennings want from life right now?" To pay my rent on time and maybe have enough left over to replace my camera lens. She said it lightly, but there was truth beneath the humor. Long term, I want to be a real photographer, the kind whose work hangs in galleries instead of just working in them. I want to capture moments that matter, that make people feel something. Tell me about your favorite photograph, one you've taken. Grace thought about it. Last month I was walking through the old industrial district at dawn. Everything was golden and hazy, and there was this abandoned factory with broken windows. The light was coming through, hitting all the dust particles in the air, and there was this bird perched on a rusted beam. It was so still and perfect, this moment of beauty in decay. I took maybe 50 shots, but one of them captured exactly what I felt, like even broken things can be beautiful if you look at them right. Robert was quiet for a moment. I'd like to see that photograph. Really, really. I have a feeling you see the world differently than most people. They talked through dinner and dessert, lingering over coffee. Grace told him about growing up in a town where everyone knew everyone, where her dreams of being an artist were met with concerned suggestions to study something practical. Robert shared stories from his early years running the company, the mistakes and near failures, the slow climb to success. You make it sound inevitable, but it must have been terrifying, Grace said. It was. There were nights I didn't sleep, convinced I'd lose everything. But I was too stubborn to quit. Robert reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. Sometimes stubbornness is the only thing that gets you through. The touch sent electricity up her arm. Grace did not pull away. When they finally left the restaurant, Robert walked her to her car, an ancient Honda that looked embarrassed parked near his sleek Mercedes. I had a really great time tonight, Grace said, leaning against her car door. So did I. Robert stepped closer, leaving space between them but making his intentions clear. Can I see you again? I'd like that. Tuesday. I have to fly to Chicago tomorrow for meetings, but I'll be back Monday night. Tuesday works. Grace felt brave, perhaps from the wine or perhaps from the way he was looking at her. You could text me while you're gone if you want. I want. Robert reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, intimate. Drive safe, Grace. She did text him while he was in Chicago. Short messages at first, then longer ones. He sent her a picture of the skyline at night, and she sent him one of the sunrise from her apartment window. They talked about everything and nothing, building a foundation in pixels and words. Their second date was a walk through the botanical gardens followed by lunch at a deli that made the best sandwiches Grace had ever eaten. Their third was a movie that neither of them paid much attention to because they were too busy talking in whispers until people shushed them. Their fourth was cooking dinner at Robert's house, a beautiful modern place in the suburbs that made Grace's studio look like a closet. "This is where you live?" she asked, taking in the open floor plan, the chef's kitchen, the windows that overlooked a private garden. "I know it's a lot. I had it built 5 years ago when the company really took off." Robert looked almost embarrassed. "It feels too big sometimes. It's beautiful." Grace walked through the living room, noting the lack of personal touches. Expensive furniture but few photographs, no clutter, nothing that screamed home. "Do you actually use all this space?" "Honestly, not really. I work a lot, but I'm trying to change that." They made pasta together, Grace chopping vegetables while Robert handled the sauce. He moved around the kitchen with easy competence, and she liked watching him in this domestic setting. He seemed more relaxed here than in restaurants, more himself. "Tell me something nobody knows about you," Grace said, stealing a piece of bell pepper. Robert considered. "I wanted to be a teacher when I was younger. History, I loved the stories, the way everything connected." He stirred the sauce. "But my dad got sick and someone had to take over the shop, and that was that." Do you resent it? No. I found something I was good at, something that mattered. But sometimes I wonder about the alternate version of my life. He looked at her. Your turn. Tell me something nobody knows. Grace bit her lip. Sometimes I'm terrified I'm not actually talented. That I'm just deluding myself about the photography thing, and one day I'll wake up and realize I've wasted years chasing something I was never going to catch. Grace. Robert set down the spoon and turned to face her fully. I've seen your work. You showed me your portfolio last week. You have a gift. The question isn't whether you're talented, it's whether you're brave enough to keep pursuing it when things get hard. That's easy for you to say. You succeeded. After years of failure, after almost losing everything twice, success isn't a straight line. He reached for her hand. And for what it's worth, I believe in you. The words settled into her chest, warm and solid. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. You barely know me. I'm working on fixing that. His other hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Can I kiss you? Grace nodded, not trusting her voice. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and searching, a question as much as a statement. She kissed him back, her hands finding his shoulders, and felt something inside her click into place. This was right. Despite the age difference, despite the money gap, despite every logical reason they should not work, this felt right. They broke apart slowly, foreheads resting together. I've wanted to do that for weeks, Robert murmured. Why didn't you? I wanted to make sure you wanted it too. That this wasn't just about money or novelty or whatever else people might assume. Grace pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Do I seem like someone who cares about money? No, you seem like someone who cares about real things. It's one of the many reasons I find you fascinating. They ate dinner on his back patio, the evening warm and filled with the sound of crickets. Robert told her about his sister Claire, who ran a nonprofit in San Francisco and called him every Sunday without fail. Grace talked about her younger brother Tyler, who was in his first year of college studying engineering, and was probably the only member of her family who understood why she had moved to the city. Do your parents know about me? Robert asked. I mentioned I was seeing someone. I didn't mention the Millionaire CEO part. Grace picked at her pasta. They'd worry about the age difference, about me getting hurt. They worry a lot in general. The age thing does concern me sometimes, Robert admitted. We're at different stages of life. You're just starting out. I'm established, set in my ways. You don't seem set in your ways. I'm 43. I wake up at 5 every morning. I go to bed at 10. I've had the same routine for a decade. You're 23 and figuring out who you are. He set down his fork. I don't want to hold you back from anything. Grace was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. I'm not looking for someone to hold me back or to take care of me. I'm looking for someone who sees me, who challenges me, who makes me want to be better. Age is just a number. What matters is how you make me feel. And how do I make you feel? Like I matter. Like my dreams are possible. Like maybe I'm not as alone in this big, confusing city as I thought I was. She reached for his hand across the table. You make me feel seen. Robert brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. You make me feel young again. Not in age, but in possibility. Like there's still so much life left to experience. They started spending most of their free time together. Robert would pick her up after her gallery shifts, and they would grab coffee or walk through the park. She would meet him for lunch on his less busy days, bringing sandwiches to eat in his office while he showed her blueprints and explained the intricacies of industrial machinery with an enthusiasm that made even equipment manufacturing sound exciting. Grace met his sister Claire over video call one Sunday evening. Claire was sharp and funny, with the same blue eyes as her brother and a directness that Grace appreciated. So you're the one who's got my brother smiling again, Claire said, settling into her couch with a mug of tea. It's good to see. Again, Grace glanced at Robert, who was sitting beside her at his kitchen table. He's been a workaholic hermit for years. It worried me. Claire leaned toward the camera. But you seem to be good for him. Just don't let him talk about work all the time. He needs hobbies. I have hobbies, Robert protested. Working out and reading business journals don't count. Claire turned her attention back to Grace. What are your intentions with my brother, Claire? Robert warned. What? It's a fair question. You're young, he's got money, I'm making sure. Grace appreciated the protectiveness even as it made her nervous. I'm not interested in his money, I'm interested in him. He's kind and smart and makes me laugh. The millionaire thing is honestly kind of intimidating. Good answer, Claire smiled. Okay, I approve. Robert, don't screw this up. After the call ended, Robert pulled Grace into his lap. Sorry about that, she's protective. I like her, and I get it. She loves you. Grace looped her arms around his neck. For what it's worth, my best friend Melissa has already stalked you online and determined you're not a serial killer. That's reassuring. She also thinks I'm insane for not caring about the money. Are you insane? Robert's hand settled on her waist, warm through the thin fabric of her shirt. Probably, but not about that. Grace kissed him, soft and slow. These moments had become her favorite when they were alone and unhurried, when she could feel how much he wanted her matched by how much he respected her pace. They had not slept together yet, both of them content to take things slow, but the tension was building between them, sweet and inevitable. That night, after Robert had driven her home and kissed her good night at her apartment door, Grace sat on her bed and thought about her life. She was still struggling financially, still working 2 jobs, still unsure about her future. But she was also happier than she could remember being. Robert had not tried to solve her problems or throw money at her struggles. He supported her, encouraged her, believed in her, but he let her fight her own battles. It was exactly what she needed. 3 months into their relationship, Robert had to travel to Germany for 2 weeks for a major deal. Grace missed him with an intensity that surprised her. They video chatted every day, sometimes twice, working around the time difference. She sent him photographs of her daily life, and he sent her pictures of Frankfurt, of the hotel room that looked the same as every hotel room, of his breakfast because he knew she would judge his food choices. I'm coming home early, he announced one morning, his face grainy on her laptop screen. Why, is everything okay? Grace was getting ready for work, her hair still wet from the shower. Everything's fine. The deal closed yesterday, 2 days ahead of schedule. I rebooked my flight. I land tomorrow evening. Robert, that's a 15-hour flight. You must be exhausted. I'm exhausted from being away from you. His voice was rough, whether from tiredness or emotion she could not tell. I miss you, Grace, more than I thought possible, her heart squeezed. I miss you too. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. I'll be ready. He took her to the nicest restaurant in the city, the kind of place Grace had only read about. She wore the one good dress she owned, and Robert wore a suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. But when they sat down and he reached for her hand across the table, none of that mattered. I did a lot of thinking in Germany, Robert said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. About us, about what this is becoming. Grace's stomach tightened with anxiety. Okay. I know it's only been 3 months. I know we're still learning each other. But Grace, I'm falling in love with you. Maybe have already fallen. He said it simply, like stating a fact, but his eyes were vulnerable. I need you to know that, and I need to know if you think you could feel the same way. Relief and joy flooded through her. I already do. I love you. I think I have since you laughed at my sprinkler story and looked at me like I was the most interesting person you'd met in years. Robert stood, pulling her up with him, and kissed her in the middle of the restaurant. Grace did not care who saw. She wrapped her arms around him and kissed him back, pouring 3 months of building emotion into it. When they finally broke apart, breathless and grinning, the entire restaurant was watching. Someone even applauded. "Take me home," Grace whispered against his lips. "You're home." They barely made it through his front door before they were kissing again, urgent this time. Robert pressed her against the wall, his hands tangling in her hair. "Are you sure?" he asked, pulling back to search her face. "I've never been more sure of anything." He took her hand and led her upstairs to his bedroom. They undressed each other slowly, mapping skin and scars and all the vulnerable places people hide. When Robert laid her down on his bed, he looked at her like she was something precious, something to be cherished. "You're beautiful," he murmured, kissing a trail down her neck. Inside and out, making love to him was everything Grace had imagined and more. He was attentive and patient, reading her responses, learning what made her gasp and arch into his touch. She let herself be vulnerable with him in a way she never had been with anyone else, trusting him completely. When they finally came together, it felt like coming home. Afterward, they lay tangled in his sheets, Grace's head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat return to normal. "Stay," Robert said, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Not just tonight, stay more. Bring some things, have a drawer. I want to wake up with you." "My lease is up in 2 months," Grace said, the idea already taking root. "I've been dreading trying to find something I can afford." "Move in with me." He said it casually, but she felt the tension in his body. "I know it's fast, but this house is too big for one person, and I hate every night you're not here. At least think about it." Grace propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "You want me to move in?" "I want a lot of things. You in my bed every night is high on the list." Robert tucked her hair behind her ear, that gesture that always made her melt. "But only if you want to. No pressure. I'm happy to help you find your own place if that's what you need." "Let me think about it." Grace kissed him softly. "Not because I don't want to, because I need to make sure I'm doing it for the right reasons." "Fair enough." Grace did think about it over the next few days, weighing the pros and cons. Moving in together after 3 months was fast, maybe reckless. But she was paying $800 a month for a studio the size of his walk-in closet. She could save money, build up her photography fund, maybe even quit one of her jobs. More importantly, she loved him. She wanted to build a life with him. A week later, she said yes. Moving her belongings into Robert's house took exactly 1 trip in his SUV. Grace looked at her entire life packed into a dozen boxes and felt both liberated and slightly embarrassed. "This is everything?" Robert asked, carrying a box marked kitchen stuff that contained approximately 5 dishes and some mismatched silverware. "I've been living pretty minimally." Grace grabbed her bag of clothes. "Fair warning, I'm going to look ridiculous in this house. My furniture is going to look like dollhouse pieces. Then we'll get you new furniture, make this place feel like yours too." Robert set down the box and pulled her close. "Our home, Grace, not just mine." They spent the weekend rearranging, making space for her things. Grace insisted on keeping her battered desk for her photography work, and Robert converted one of his spare bedrooms into a studio for her, with good light and space for her equipment. When he showed her what he had done, Grace cried. "This is too much," she said, taking in the professional setup, the storage for her equipment, the comfortable chair and desk. "It's not enough. You needed a proper workspace." Robert wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I want you to succeed, Grace. Let me support you in the ways I can." She turned in his arms and kissed him hard. "Thank you for seeing what I need even when I don't ask for it." Living together was an adjustment. Robert woke at 5 every morning like clockwork, and Grace was naturally a night owl. He was meticulous and organized, and she tended toward creative chaos. But they learned each other's rhythms, compromised, found a balance. Robert started coming to bed later, spending evenings with her instead of working. Grace made an effort to keep shared spaces tidy. He taught her about business and investments, and she taught him to see the beauty in imperfection. 4 months after she moved in, Grace landed her first real photography commission. A local magazine wanted a series on urban renewal, and they were willing to pay actual money for her work. She ran through the house screaming when she got the email, and Robert swept her up in his arms and spun her around. "I told you," he said, grinning at her excitement. "I told you that you were talented. You have to help me celebrate properly." Grace grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the stairs. "I think I can manage that." They celebrated thoroughly, christening the shower and the bed and the couch for good measure. Afterward, lying satisfied and lazy in the late afternoon sun streaming through the bedroom windows, Grace thought about how much her life had changed in less than a year. She had gone from lonely and struggling to loved and supported, from doubting her dreams to seeing them start to materialize. "What are you thinking about?" Robert asked, his fingers trailing down her spine. "How happy I am. How unexpected this all was." Grace shifted to look at him. "Do you ever worry about the age thing, about what people think?" "Sometimes. But then I remember that we're both adults making our own choices, and anyone who has a problem with that can mind their own business." He traced her lips with his thumb. "Do you worry about it?" "Only in the sense that I hope we want the same things long term. You've already built your career. I'm just starting. You might be ready to slow down when I'm trying to speed up." Grace voiced the fear that sometimes kept her awake at night. "Then we'll figure it out together. Relationships are about compromise and communication." "Yes, we're at different places, but that doesn't mean our paths can't align." Robert pulled her closer. "I'm not going anywhere, Grace. I'm in this for the long haul. Promise, promise." That Christmas, Robert took her to meet his sister in person. They flew to San Francisco, and Claire welcomed them with open arms and sharp observations. "You're good together," she said on their second day there, when the three of them were walking through Golden Gate Park. Robert had gone ahead to take a phone call, leaving the women alone. "I've never seen him like this. Softer, happier, more present." "He makes me better too," Grace said, watching Robert's tall frame in the distance. "Sometimes I can't believe this is my life." "The money thing still doesn't bother you?" Claire asked it gently, curious rather than accusatory. "It's weird sometimes. I went from counting pennies to living in that house, to him buying me professional photography equipment like it's nothing." Grace shoved her hands in her pockets. "But I pay for what I can. Groceries, small things. He lets me contribute where it makes me feel better. And the money isn't why I love him. I'd love him if he was a teacher like he originally wanted to be." Claire nodded, satisfied. "Good, because he'd give you everything if you asked, but I'm glad you're not asking. That's how I know you're real." On Christmas morning, Robert gave Grace a camera lens she had been coveting for months, the kind of equipment that would take her photography to the next level. She gave him a leather-bound journal filled with photographs she had taken of him over the past 6 months, candid moments she had captured when he was not looking. Working at his desk, laughing at something on TV, sleeping peacefully. A visual love letter. "Grace," he breathed, paging through it slowly. "This is incredible. I don't even recognize myself in some of these." "That's because you never see yourself the way I see you." She curled into his side on Claire's couch. "The way you really are." He kissed her forehead, his arm tight around her shoulders. "Best gift I've ever received." Flying home, Grace looked out the window at the clouds and felt contentment settle into her bones. This was her life now. This love, this partnership, this future stretching out before them full of possibility. The new year brought new opportunities. Grace's magazine spread came out, and it led to more commissions. Her work started to gain recognition in the local art community. She quit waitressing, able to support herself through photography and her reduced hours at the gallery. Robert was proud, telling anyone who would listen about her talent. He came to her first small exhibition in March, standing in the corner with a glass of wine and a quiet smile while people admired her work. 3 sold, Grace whispered to him, giddy with success. 3 actual people bought my photographs. 4, Robert corrected. I bought one too. You don't count, you're biased. Doesn't make your work less brilliant. He kissed her temple. I'm so proud of you. That summer they took a trip to Maine, renting a cottage on the coast. They spent lazy days exploring tide pools, eating lobster, making love with the windows open and the sound of waves in the background. One evening, walking on the beach at sunset, Robert stopped and turned to face her. I need to tell you something, he said, taking both her hands. Grace's heart jumped. Okay. I've been thinking about the future a lot, our future. And I know we've only been together a little over a year and you're still building your career and there's no rush on anything. He was nervous, she realized. Robert Davis, confident CEO, was actually nervous. But I want you to know that this is it for me. You're it. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I want to marry you. I want kids with you. I want to grow old watching you become everything you're meant to be. Tears sprang to Grace's eyes. Robert, you don't have to answer now. I'm not even officially asking yet. I just needed you to know where my head is, where my heart is. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Grace Jennings, more than I thought I could love anyone. I love you too. Grace stood on her tiptoes to kiss him. And for the record, whenever you officially ask, my answer will be yes. His grin was brilliant. Yeah, because you're it for me too. They got engaged that October on the anniversary of the day they met. Robert proposed properly with a ring and a speech that made Grace cry happy tears. They told their families over video calls, and Grace's mother cried while her father looked concerned but accepting. Tyler was thrilled and Claire sent champagne. When's the wedding? Melissa asked when Grace showed her the ring at the gallery. We're thinking next spring. Something small, just family and close friends. Grace admired how the diamond caught the light. I still can't believe this is happening. You deserve it, you both do. Melissa hugged her tightly. I'm so happy for you. Planning the wedding was easier than Grace expected, mainly because neither she nor Robert wanted anything elaborate. They chose a small venue, a garden estate that would fit 50 people comfortably. Grace found a simple dress that made her feel beautiful without breaking the bank, though Robert had offered to buy her whatever she wanted. She chose her colors, her flowers, her photographer, taking joy in every small decision. In January, Grace learned she was pregnant. She stared at the positive test in her hand, mind racing. They had not been trying, though they had not been particularly careful either. They were getting married in 4 months. A baby was always part of the plan, just maybe not this soon. She told Robert that evening, handing him the test without preamble. He looked at it, then at her, then back at the test. You're pregnant? I'm pregnant. Grace searched his face for his reaction. I know it's sooner than we planned. Robert set down the test and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. We're having a baby. We're having a baby, she repeated and started crying. Are you happy? Really, Grace? He pulled back to look at her, his eyes wet. I'm 45 years old. I'd given up on having kids. You've given me everything I never let myself hope for. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. They moved the wedding up, getting married in February in Robert's living room with just their immediate families present. Grace wore a soft white dress that accommodated her barely there bump, and Robert cried when she walked down the makeshift aisle to him. Their vows were simple and heartfelt, promising to love and support each other through whatever life brought. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Robert kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. "Mrs. Davis," he murmured against her lips. "That's going to take some getting used to. We have time. A whole lifetime." Grace's pregnancy was relatively easy. She worked through most of it, building her portfolio and her reputation. Robert was attentive without being overbearing, reading parenting books and asking her every day how she felt. They converted another spare bedroom into a nursery, painting it soft yellow and filling it with everything a baby could need. "Are you scared?" Grace asked one night, lying in bed with Robert's hand on her stomach, feeling their daughter kick. "Terrified," he admitted. "I'm going to be 65 when she graduates high school. What if I'm too old to keep up with her?" "You'll keep up. You're the most energetic person I know." Grace covered his hand with hers. "She's lucky to have you as her dad." "I hope so. I hope I don't mess this up." "We'll mess it up together. That's what parents do." She turned to face him. "But we'll love her, and that's what matters most." Their daughter Riley was born in early August, arriving 3 weeks early after a labor that lasted 12 hours. Robert held Grace's hand through all of it, coaching her breathing, telling her how strong she was, crying when their daughter finally emerged screaming and perfect. "She's so small," Robert whispered, holding Riley for the first time, this tiny human cradled in his large hands. "She's perfect," Grace said, exhausted and elated and overwhelmed with love. They brought Riley home to a house that suddenly felt complete. The first few weeks were chaos, both of them sleep-deprived and learning, but they figured it out together. Robert was surprisingly good with diaper changes and late-night feedings, and Grace documented everything with her camera, capturing the tenderness of watching him become a father. One early morning, Grace found Robert in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair with Riley asleep on his chest. He was talking to her in a soft voice, telling her about the life they would give her, the opportunities she would have, how loved she was. Grace stood in the doorway, her heart so full it hurt. This was her family, her husband, her daughter, this life they were building together. "Hey," Robert said, noticing her, "did we wake you?" "No, I just wanted to see you both." Grace came into the room, perching on the arm of the rocking chair. "You're good at this, the dad thing." "You think so, I know so. Look at her. She's completely content." Robert gazed down at their daughter, wonder still evident on his face even after 3 weeks. "I never thought I'd have this. A family, someone like you, a chance to do this right. We have it now. That's what matters." Grace kissed his temple. "I love you, Robert Davis." "Thank you for spilling coffee on your shirt that morning." He laughed quietly, mindful of the sleeping baby. "Best accident of my life." As the months passed, they settled into their new normal. Grace worked from home, building her career around Riley's schedule. Her photography continued to gain recognition, and she had her first solo show at a major gallery when Riley was 6 months old. Robert was there with their daughter strapped to his chest in a carrier, showing her the photographs and explaining them in serious tones that made Grace laugh. "She has no idea what you're saying. She will someday. I'm getting her ready." Robert kissed Riley's head, her dark hair soft under his lips. "She's going to grow up surrounded by art and creativity and parents who love each other. That's the best foundation we can give her." On their first wedding anniversary, Robert surprised Grace with a renovated space downtown that he had turned into a photography studio for her. Professional lighting, a darkroom, space for exhibitions and client meetings. Her name was on the door in elegant lettering. Grace Jennings Davis Photography. "This is too much," Grace said, taking it all in with tears streaming down her face. "It's what you've earned. You've worked so hard, balanced everything so well. You deserve a proper space for your art." Robert wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. "Besides, I figured you'd want somewhere to work as Riley gets older and more mobile. You think of everything." "I try." He turned her to face him. "You've given me everything, Grace. A real home, a family, a reason to leave work at reasonable hours. Letting me invest in your dreams is the least I can do. I love you so much it's actually ridiculous." Right back at you. Life continued its forward motion. Riley grew, hitting milestones that Robert documented meticulously in a baby book, his neat handwriting noting every tooth, every word, every accomplishment. Grace's career flourished, her work appearing in national magazines and galleries across the country. They traveled as a family, showing Riley the world, creating memories. When Riley was 3, they found out Grace was pregnant again. Their son Ryan arrived the following year, completing their family. Robert was 66 when Ryan took his first steps, and Grace was 29, and the age gap that had seemed so significant in the beginning barely registered anymore. They were just parents, partners, people building a life together. On the 5-year anniversary of the day they met, Grace set up her camera on a tripod in their backyard. She gathered Robert, Riley, and baby Ryan, positioning them in the golden afternoon light. "What's this for?" Robert asked, holding Ryan while Riley leaned against his leg. "Our family. I want to capture this moment, who we are right now." Grace set the timer and hurried into position, settling beside Robert and pulling Riley into her lap. "Smile." The camera clicked, capturing them. Grace at 28, Robert at 48, Riley at 4, Ryan at 6 months. A family that should not have worked on paper, with their age gap and different backgrounds, but somehow fit together perfectly. Later, looking at the photograph on her computer, Grace thought about that morning 5 years ago. Running late, spilling coffee, meeting a man who would change everything. Sometimes the best things in life came from accidents, from taking chances, from being brave enough to let someone in despite all the logical reasons not to. The age gap that had worried her in the beginning had aged into forever, just like they had promised each other. 20 years difference meant nothing when you found the right person, when you built a life based on love and respect and genuine partnership. Robert came into her studio, Riley on his shoulders and Ryan in his arms. "Come on, Mom. We're making dinner." Grace saved the photo and stood, joining her family. Her husband, who had started as a stranger on a sidewalk. Her children, who were the best parts of both of them. This life that began with coffee and chaos and had grown into something beautiful and lasting. "What are we making?" she asked, taking Ryan so Robert could wrangle Riley. "Pasta." Riley wants to help, which means it will take twice as long and be twice as messy. Robert grinned, looking younger than his years. But that's the fun part. In the kitchen, Grace watched her husband teach their daughter to measure ingredients while their son babbled happily on her hip. This was everything. Not the big house or the successful careers or the financial security, though those things were nice. But this, the everyday moments, the love that filled the spaces between words, the family they had created together. She thought about 23-year-old Grace, struggling and alone and unsure, and wished she could tell her that everything would work out. That the man she would accidentally cover in coffee would become her whole world. That the age gap she worried about would become irrelevant in the face of real love. That sometimes the best things in life came when you least expected them. Robert caught her eye across the kitchen and smiled, the same smile that had hooked her that first morning. Grace smiled back, her heart full to bursting with gratitude and love and the simple joy of being exactly where she belonged. 20 years between them had become forever, and she would not change a single thing.